With that, I'll call to order the meeting tonight, 7 o'clock, at City Council Chambers. On our agenda for tonight's meeting, first item of business is our general citizens' input on non-agenda items. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to have input on non-agenda items? Not seeing anyone rise to the microphone, we will close citizen input on non-agenda items. Public hearings. We have no public hearings scheduled for tonight. We do have the finalization of a previous decision that will be on the agenda later. Is there any new business? Anybody on the staff doesn't have any new business for us? Does anybody on the commission have any new business? Nope. Okay, we have no new business before us, which brings us to agenda item 5, which is to review the findings on the site design and review for Fred Meyer DR 12.03. So with that, I will open up for staff. If staff has any additional comments, we'll open for staff any additional comments, and then we'll go directly to the commission for finalization or discussion about the findings as they're written.
Okay. Staff took a stab at preparing these. Give our associate planner, Angie, credit for doing the first round. And then I took a hold of them and added a little bit of detail that I thought was unique to your discussion from the meeting where you made your decision. Then we passed these to the applicant's attorney to review. He made a couple additions and edits to them, and they came back, and we have just one additional edit that I wanted to point out to you. It's basically a wording correction. It happens to be on page 3 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 6th bullet down that begins with the word signage. In its corrected manner, it now reads, signage proposed on the canopy was determined to fall within the overall code allowance for all frontages for both number and size, based on estimated size calculations for signs as depicted. And the rest of it's okay.
So there was 2 words in there that were
Yeah,
surplusage.
Yep. We've actually got 3 surplus words, and then we added 2 words on the end of the sentence. So it reads much better, those corrections. And other than that, it would be your determination as to whether we captured the gist of what you feel was the discussion and general findings. The findings unique to the meeting are basically in the bullets that are listed, and then if we got the conditions as you remembered them attached.
Okay. Was there any comments or discussion or items to be corrected or modified or considered by the commission?
No, not for me.
None.
None.
I had noticed one, and I'm not sure that we, I don't think we vote, I know we did not vote on the particular edits item by item. We voted them as a group. But one of them, I had made the comment that I had believed, or believed that the competing experts on the traffic analysis, that to me the more believable study was the formal written study of the applicants. And I had said that, I think we had, it's in the minutes of the meeting,
Okay.
and that wasn't translated. Oh, here it was, the discussion and the motion on the last page, page 17 of 18 on the minutes. where Laney had quoted me, if this was the exact words I said, and I would agree with it, that I had said the traffic impact analysis presented by the applicants was more convincing and that mitigation measures were adequate and feasible as presented by the applicant in the traffic impact analysis. And I think that was in line with the very final things we were doing on the motion, and that wasn't, I didn't think, reflected in the findings specifically.
So that could be another bullet right on the end, maybe?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate, because I know they obviously both hired people to do traffic, analysis and experts in that analysis, on that topic. But, and so to me, the more convincing on the particular elements was the applicants, even though they both presented experts on that. That's why I had proposed that, and I think we adopted that, so I thought it should be in the findings.
I would propose that we just maybe use the wording, it was like I've done above or something, that it was concluded that the traffic impact analysis presented by the applicants was more convincing.
Did the three of you agree with that?
Yeah,
That was what we
I
had.
remember the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, then let's add in there as the last bullet point, then that same quote that Laney's got on the minutes. It was, you could say it was concluded that you see that part, Brian?
Yep, I sure do.
Okay. Anything else on these?
You need a motion to approve the
Yeah, we'll
minutes?
make a final motion to approve, or, I'm sorry, not the minutes, the findings.
Oh, the findings.
The findings,
I'm sorry.
yes. So if there's no more discussion, then a motion to approve the findings as amended would be in order.
I so move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second that.
Okay, motion to approve the findings as have been amended tonight has been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. No nays. And anybody abstaining? Nobody abstaining. 4-0. Okay. The next item of business for tonight would be the approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to approve the minutes?
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor of adopting the minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. No nays. Anybody abstaining? No one is abstaining. 4-0. And I would comment, Laney, these are particularly good minutes for such a meeting with all that much discussion. It's actually,
You did a great job.
okay, the next item of business, items of interest, reports from staff. You had mentioned earlier that maybe we'd pass out the policies or discuss those a little bit. Why don't we go ahead and do that?
Okay.
Or unless you, well, if you have any other more business-related stuff, let's handle that first.
Yeah, I really
then we'll go
don't.
to-
I think this is the only item that I wanted to take advantage of this time.
Are these the ones that are included in our,
Yeah, if you've got those, I've got extra here in case you guys didn't bring them with you. Could you,
And let's open this for just Q&A. Brian can, talk at will on this, but the commissioners, if you want to ask questions or there's things on this, why don't you bring those up so we can use our time most effectively if you've got particular questions or want, clarity on particular pieces to these kinds of policies and how things work.
there's some certain ones in here that I could point out a couple things, not necessarily that need changing, but just as, my idea is that we go through this just a little bit more as a educational tool for those that aren't that familiar with them, because there are some actual explanations in here that are almost legal explanations what bias is and conflict of interest and how you run the meetings and things like that. And
Yeah.
that's why I was hopeful that maybe you'd had a chance to read these after we handed them out a couple meetings ago. But I don't know if there's really anything significant that needs to be changed, although I did find a couple things on the very beginning that we might make reference to. Our cable TV channel now is CTV5 rather than OCTS.
Okay.
And we'll take out the reference to past staff people, and we'll just make it generic, so we don't have a staff person listed in it any longer, as far as the little things we put on the end of our agendas now, if you've ever seen those posted, for the indicating that our hearing room is accessible and that we will accommodate the hearing impaired and this kind of stuff.
And we do generally have staff reports available 7 days before the hearings, public hearings, right?
Yeah, that's
There's a
actually,
state law on that, I think.
the fact that you brought that up, we've always gone beyond the minimum that's required
Okay.
here in Canby. Every now and then, that gets us in trouble. I wouldn't mind if we actually changed this to be 7 days, which is state statute requirement. Our goal will still be to do exactly what our practice is now, is to try to put things out the Friday a week before the meeting, which makes our 10 days without trouble. But there's been occasion when we don't get that done. We've always managed to meet the statute requirement of 7 days. It's up to you, but I'd actually prefer if it said 7.
Does our rules specifically say 10 days somewhere? I just knew the 7 from state statute. I wouldn't.
Yeah, the very first item on these policies indicates that our policy is 10 days.
Okay.
Where are you?
Oh, okay.
So I'm reading,
Change that to
We got the
7.
same thing here. Yeah.
right here. This is.
Oh, right there at the top.
It
Okay,
was
thanks.
very-
Well, that's the agenda, though. That's different than staff reports.
Yeah, well, we do all at the same. I mean, our policy is to have the staff reports ready 10 days before,
Okay.
too.
Okay.
So I guess I was thinking of both.
But that isn't what occurred this last time, for this one.
Yeah, with the findings, like, when did we send those out? We didn't send them out 10 days before.
Yes, we did.
Did we make that?
It's the minutes that were.
Right.
Oh, yeah, it's the minutes that we
Yeah.
were. Okay.
Okay.
But I'm not sure that the 7 days actually would apply to, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but 7 days doesn't apply to everything. I know that.
Well, actually, it's
I think it's
never-
on public hearings, I think.
Yeah, it's never a problem
applications.
getting the agenda out 10 days before.
Yeah.
It's the staff reports.
Yeah, right, obviously. Yeah.
I guess I had
Crime
thought
and
that.
punishment.
So maybe that really doesn't matter, because I think that's the only place where it states this 10 days.
Okay.
You're right, I was thinking of the whole bundle. Agenda isn't a problem.
I was going to ask you something else on this.
Are there actually a variety of interpreters, including somebody that can sign? What pool of people do we draw from for these sorts of things?
I do not know, because it's never happened so far, and we would consult with our city recorder to try to help us
Sure.
if we needed to find somebody.
Okay.
Oh, the other thing I was going to say, on our policies, I don't know if we have a specific, pardon me if the TV land isn't working there. I don't know if we have a specific policy on this or not, but I would ask you to, as our staff, to strongly discourage applicants or opponents from doing what took place last month. I think that gentleman that was the opponent, the attorney that was the opponent, did his client a real disservice by trying to drop on us at the time of the hearing, a quarter-inch packet of materials where he wasn't allowing the commission even the ability to fully digest what he was going to present. You know, and some of us do a lot of homework in between meetings, and we'll go through that stuff. And regardless of the merits, you know, whether his arguments were good or bad, he didn't even allow people to necessarily comb through them. And he may have been doing that on purpose for strategy, to not let the other side digest it. But to the average, I guess, applicant or opponent, tell them, try to not do that so we can digest the stuff.
Right. Well, we didn't have an opportunity because we didn't know that he was bringing anything.
Yeah. Well, I tried to warn him the month prior to that. Said,
Yeah.
don't do this
Yep.
to us, please.
I think maybe that was part of the strategy.
There is one item that's kind of interesting. I don't know that much about it. Chair Smith may know more than I do. On the first page, down under bias and disqualifications, there's a terminology that's used that the commissioner being challenged, in this case, if someone has challenged you as being biased, so they don't want you to make a decision, it talks about you will not vote unless required by the law of necessity to do so. And my understanding is that this come up a couple times, and that it has something to do with if there's too many members that haven't attended or haven't studied the material or weren't here when the minutes were approved by this law of necessity, they'll let you go ahead and vote regardless, because we have to get business done. And if you can't ever get a quorum to get business done, then that's when this law of necessity jumps in.
And this probably also comes, there was an Oregon Supreme Court case a long time ago that had to do with bias under Oregon law. And what it said is essentially it was a fisheries matter where I think everybody pretty much in the community was affected, or it was like a board. It was a board where in order to be on the board, you had to have background in fisheries of some sort. And so they were voting on fees for fisheries. And if they disqualified everybody that was interested in fees for fisheries, none of them would have been able to vote. And so the Supreme Court said, well, your bias doesn't count if you're required to have that background in order to serve on the board in the first place. And that's one place it came up, and it's definitely it's a bedrock principle of Oregon government law. So that may be where that comes in too. Then you guys probably know, the way I'll generally do it in our meetings is we used to, when Dan was the chair, he would go through each person and say, I don't have a conflict of interest. I don't have ex parte contacts, each affirmatively. What I'll do is just generally say, is there anybody that needs to declare a conflict of interest or ex parte contacts, and let the person declare it. We don't have to go down the line because it's not a duty to check with each person. It's a duty to declare it if you do have one. And I think we should be vigorous about that. Just because somebody may have a potential, say one of the people up here had owned a gas station or something last month, they would need to declare that, and it would be important. We'd want that to be out there. And so let's make sure we do that on particularly the conflict of interest and ex parte contacts. And ex parte contacts, if you guys know what that is, I see your eyebrows. The ex parte contacts essentially means, has anybody contacted you about the substance of the particular application outside of a public meeting? If they have, it's not necessarily even a big deal, but you have to disclose it. You have to say, I have contacted this person, or I went to that site. Here's for land use and planning commissions, an important thing is, if you went personally and visited the construction site of such and such, project, you would need to declare that. You would need to say, I went there, and I walked around at the site that they're proposing. Not a big deal.
Not that it's a good or a bad thing.
It's not that it's a good or a bad deal. It's so that everybody knows, what's taken place. And if they say, well, oh, you had a conversation with the applicant? Well, now I think maybe they would just out there. It just puts it out there. It doesn't mean that, anybody's going to necessarily be disqualified on an ex parte contact, means you got to put it out there so that it's open.
Because I could see myself, especially with some of these plans, wanting to do that, just wanting to go and assess it visually, just standing, like this particular lot, I know it quite well, so that I didn't need to do that, but I could definitely see myself wanting to do that at times, just to assess
One
what's
of the
going
things.
on.
I had incidents where we voted for Habitat for Humanity, and I was very involved with Habitat for Humanity. And I asked if anybody had an objection, and nobody had an objection, so I voted on this. But that was an incident where I was involved with Habitat for Humanity.
How far away would you consider an arm's length on something like that? The reason I ask is, for example, if you, one of the people that is against the gas station was the Hulbert's flower people, that shopped at Hulbert's.
No, it would be some sort of, one, it's the conversation about the on the ex parte contact, it's a conversation or special insight into the application itself.
Okay.
Conflicts of interest is different, and there's actually a whole set of laws that define that one, and what you do in that. So those are much more defined than ex parte contacts, but.
But I've heard if you're in doubt, just state it.
Yeah.
You can't overstate, so.
If you state it, then the audience and the rest of your planning commissioners can make a determination from whatever it is that's making you a little uneasy. And
Well, I'm feeling
let you know.
uneasy right now. Because it didn't even occur to me, but the engineering company that did this group, McKinsey, does business with my company. Now, I don't have any contact with them, but is that something that I should have said something about? I mean, I went, oh, yeah, I know these folks.
I can tell you, I have sued people on conflicts of interest that are in government seats before, and that wouldn't qualify as a conflict of interest. It's a long ways from being close enough.
Okay.
So don't worry about that, but you can always mention things.
Err on the
Yeah.
side of caution.
I
Okay.
think that's the best practice. You don't want to be one of these people that, is
think-
accused of wrongdoing or any of that kind of
Uh,
thing,
I
well,
think
or
Mayor
hiding
Hodson
something.
stated Ryan Oliver was his insurance agent,
Right.
so.
Oh.
Right.
One of the other things on site visits, I couldn't find it now. I was reading through this before the meeting. I can't find it now. But somewhere in here, it actually encourages you to make site visits for the quasi-judicial. And that's the other, I don't know how familiar you are with the terminology quasi-judicial versus legislative. And of course, the last time we were here, we were going over a text amendment and change of the code. That's a legislative change. It's changing the text and the policies that we deal with. And in those, you don't have ex parte contact. You can go out and talk to anybody you want about proposed new legislation, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, what they think.
Like the text amendments.
Yeah.
You can go talk to anybody, send out your own surveys on text amendments and, all the things we've been, the whole laundry list of things. You can talk about that as much as you want.
But then on the quasi-judicial, which is you're acting almost like a judge, that's where all these terminologies, and it's important that you disclose ex parte conduct and that you consider whether you're biased or not because of associations and if it's a financial interest, it's conflict of interest as defined in the law. But one of the things that you can do that we don't normally do, and it takes extra time, but if you visit a site, you disclose that you visit the site, but you also want to disclose if you came to a conclusion that you didn't have before you went to the site, because that's the information that you really should be disclosing is that, and while there, I noticed that there was a deep ravine and there was a wetlands over to the side that I didn't know about from reading the staff report that led me to believe that maybe something or other. And so if you come to some sort of conclusion from your observations, that's information that may not be available in any other form, written or by testimony by somebody else, because it was your own observation and it led you to some conclusion, and so you want to share that information so that everybody has the benefit that didn't go visit the site of what you had that might influence how they feel about the site too. And so that's, and Chair Smith was right in that you don't have to be afraid of ex parte contact as long as you disclose it. The trouble is, if you have it, it's bothersome. It's because you have to remember all of the conversations you had to disclose them. And that's why they recommend that you just avoid contact and discussions with people, because if you have them, nothing bad will happen, but you have to, ideally, you need to disclose it. And now you've got all that problem. Did you take notes, or did you remember who you talked with, and so you can remember to tell us at the meeting? And once you do that, there's not a problem.
Brian, as to what you'd mentioned before on bias, I was going to say, if your mind is already made up, the basic definition of bias is that your mind is already made up. I don't know what the person could say. We were not going to change it. And then on taking a site visit, the important thing to do, if you're going to take site visits, is just make sure you don't basically go with other commissioners. One other commissioners technically wouldn't be a problem, but you could get into a quorum issue and have a public meetings problem if you went with other commissioners. So you go by yourself, because even if, like a night like tonight where there was 4 of us, we constitute a quorum, but if 2 people have gone together, you might have a problem there. So that you might not want to go with another commissioner if you do go do a site visit. One thing I just noticed, I didn't catch this before, it's not exactly clear. We should maybe look at this. The very last part of our policies, it says the concurrence of a majority of the commission members qualified to vote shall be necessary to decide any question before the commission. This qualified to vote, and when I throw my attorney hat on, thinking about different ways you could interpret this, does qualified to vote mean qualified because you're here today, or qualified because you're actually a commissioner? And I don't know the answer to that.
Where's that written?
Very last paragraph
Of the
on
whole-
page 11.
Just above where it says work session.
And I think the answer to that is a majority of the people voting in that particular meeting. Otherwise, you would always have to have 4 votes regardless of who's there. And I don't know, we might want to check that to see if there's other places in our code or in the city code that dictate an interpretation on that, but I could see that being viewed 2 different ways.
So it should read something like a concurrence of a majority of the commission members in attendance.
I think so, but this is just our policies, so this is definitely the less formal and is probably passed by a previous planning commission. Our regular code probably speaks to this more directly, and I didn't do that I didn't see that till just now. Brian, do you remember anywhere in the code that specifically talks about that? I would assume that it's a majority here on that given night.
Yeah, the only thing I know of somewhere in Chapter 16 or something that defines the planning commission, I think it just talks about
The definitions section.
majority vote. I don't know any more specifics about that at all.
That might be something we can look into. It's not going to matter tonight. But
I can check on that, see if our city attorney has an opinion or something.
anybody have any other questions on these, or should we close this part of the meeting?
I kind of had a question that it says all info on page 8, or, I'm sorry, page 2. Second paragraph under communications with staff, all written information given by staff to 1 commissioner should be, let's see. Okay, that makes sense now. Sorry, I thought that was talking about a commissioner giving staff information, but I think that makes sense. I think we do that anyways. If we give out something new, we'll give it to everyone.
If one particular commissioner requests us to research something, and so then we get that information back to them to help them in their decision-making when the hearing comes, then we want to make sure that we give that same information to every commissioner.
Now, is this
Yeah.
per-
Well, it says in the first sentence, should be distributed to all, and then the second sentence, informational material of major significance.
Yeah,
So
that
it kinda-
seems to almost a conflict there, I guess.
and is this relative to a particular case, or
No, it's
in
just-
general?
It's just in
a
general.
general
Well, you're right that,
observation.
Man, you guys are gonna hate me then.
All right. Yeah, you asked for the traffic, the
Yeah, I'm halfway through that. It's really,
the
really,
TSP.
really exciting.
So I don't think
Only if it has to
Yeah,
do with
it's-
probably a particular,
major
like a
significance.
quasi judicial or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
You know, where you want everybody to have the same info for fairness.
Well, and that's what I was saying. I mean, I'm going through some of the stuff, just reading it to read it, so I know what our guidelines are. You know, I had questions also about ADA. There's not much about ADA in there, so what I found so far. So, if you guys want all that, as I ask for it,
Yeah, I would think not, unless it has to do with a particular quasi judicial public hearing type of a thing, then that's where we really need to have it all, if somebody says.
I think then we could
we could.
omit the first sentence, right?
because I could see the benefit in that. You know, if somebody's looking for something particular,
Right.
you've got.
Yeah.
If you're finding
That'd probably be easy.
good information there, everybody should see it.
If we were to omit that first sentence, it would still work fine.
Yeah.
Or even pulling that first sentence of the second paragraph up with the other one, so that that's kind of clear that is factual issues regarding the quasi-judicial land use hearings. Then down below, informational material. Otherwise,
Okay.
it would be separate. While we were at it, I looked up Chapter 16, Section 6110 on meetings and quorum, and it doesn't, there's an ordinance that I don't have access to right now, but it does, all it says is a majority of the members of the commission constitute a quorum. So it doesn't really answer our question.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And that
Well, maybe
ordinance,
we'll-
that ordinance number is just the ordinance as it was passed.
As it was
Put that in
passed
there.
by, yeah.
Yeah, so there's no real ordinance. That got me a little bit. I was trying to find things, and I'm like, "Where's this ordinance?" And my wife actually said, "No, that's the ordinance that was passed and put that into
Right,
place." So
right.
there's no real ordinance to go with it. That's all it says.
Yeah, we might want to have the council weigh in on that and just tell us, say if we have 4 people, we have the minimum that we can do business on is 3 of the 4. So that would you'd have to have more than 50%. Is that enough? Brian, could you guys just send a little letter of inquiry from us to the council to say our interpretation of our quorum requirement is that if we had a meeting where we only had 4 people, 4 of 7, 3 of those 4 voting would be enough to
Okay.
do it, because that would be more than a majority of a quorum, which is normally the way that you can. And also with even if we had 5 of us here, 3 out of 5 would be enough, because it'd be more than a majority of a quorum. The alternative to that doesn't seem to make much sense, which you would always have to have 4 people, regardless of whether there was 4, 5, 6, or 7 commission members there.
Right. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Just something simple, Brian, and have them
Okay.
If they want me to come and beg for their approval on that, I can come to a council meeting.
Do we have any provision for taking votes via email? I mean,
I don't think you can do that because you'd have public meeting, open meetings problems. Everything we do would be subject to Public Records Act and open meetings laws. And I mean, you might be able to do it on something, I suppose, but I don't know. I don't know if we have any. Your actual question, I don't know if we have any provisions on that. It would be tricky, and you'd have
I
to.
don't think there's anything
tread
in
carefully.
here about just what we tried that didn't work, just at the last meeting with a phone type situation. It probably, I mean, I passed it through our city attorney. He said, well, I don't see why it wouldn't work, but the trouble is you raise issues when you try to do that, because somebody in the audience could question who you're really talking with on the phone. Is it who they say they are? And so you have to kind of say those kind of things. Yes, you know, I've called this number before the meeting, and I know this is Commissioner so-and-so, and I recognize their voice, and they're voting now. And all of those kind of things make it kind of tricky. But I guess the question was doing something by vote by email or something.
yeah, I would think that it would be, just because of open meetings laws, that would be, I would probably not be able to do it, but I was curious.
Any other topics? Or?
What is this about on page 4, flag signs and posters? Would that be like,
Probably during the meeting, probably.
that be some,
Yeah.
like a proponent or opponent with a poster saying vote?
Yeah, if you
Yes.
haven't been through meetings like that, they're
But
quite
what-
exciting.
What about, the U.S. flag? I mean, I guess those are authorized by the chair.
Yeah, apparently so.
Okay, Mr. Chair, do you?
Do I like that flag or not? I don't know. Somebody gave me a lot of power, I guess, with flag patrol. One thing, though, that we want to keep in mind, I see at a lot of public meetings, is we don't want to get into Q&A with speakers. Our job is to try and take in all the information and then discuss it and come to a good decision. We don't want to ever get pulled into the audience or some public member of the public asking us questions and like starting a new dialogue. And that's just a trap.
Like occurred at the school board meeting too.
2 months ago, yeah. If you used to watch the old Clackamas County Commission, the actual county commission, they would get trapped into that all the time, answering questions of the audience, and it was a fool's errand because you're never gonna accomplish anything by having a short-term dialogue with somebody that's like that. And
So unless they're sitting right there.
they make comments, they get to give their input, but it's not. They don't get to give you an inquisition on why do you think this. It's
Shot
it's
it
what
from
it's
the
for.
audience. You have to sign the
Yeah.
input time slot sheet, and it's a process for it.
Well, another related issue to that is under citizen comments. And actually, the city council seems to not quite follow what I think's the preferred process, is that you take the citizen comments and they actually try to answer them at that meeting right after they make their comments. And usually they're asking questions about, well, why is this street not doing this, or why doesn't my light turn on, and when they should really take that information and give it to the city manager to get an answer and respond as quickly as we can after the meeting. but they tend to try to answer those questions at the meeting for people.
I agree with what you're saying, Brian. That may not be the best practice, but it's actually quite nice. We used to do that when I was city councilor. I mean, it's just a nice thing about a small town. So you can have people that probably know what they're talking about, can answer your question right on the spot.
Right.
So,
And
I don't know.
I've recognized that, and I've recognized the small town way of doing things. I also recognized how it gets you in the same trap you were
Yeah.
talking about quite frequently, and the
Yeah.
meetings go on because, and oftentimes you risk giving wrong information
That's true.
because you either don't have the right people in the room to truly answer it.
So when situations like that
So-
occur, how do we get back to that particular citizen?
Well, I think recognizing what he said and the way Canby has always done things, if it's clear that somebody in the room knows the answer, you might as well tell them. But
Yeah.
if there's some uncertainty, then you should really take the time to get the right people.
And if you get some, nice little old lady up there that just says, "Hey, I've got this problem because X, Y, and Z," and she doesn't have a clue how to fix it, and it's obvious. Well, go to code enforcement and tell code enforcement, and they'll look into it for you. It's something simple. You can just give them a personal touch, rather than you wouldn't want to sit up here and ignore them and say, "Thank you for your input."
Right.
I'm going to send Tyler out there right away, take care of that problem.
All right. Anything else? Any commission items of interest, or anybody have any topics?
I would like to say that I really enjoy reading or looking on the planning thing that you sent to us as planners. I got on there
cool.
and looked at some of that
Yeah.
stuff, and it's very interesting.
And I've signed up, because if I signed up for the weekly email, because otherwise I'm not gonna always think of to go log in on the website, but they do have an option where it'll send you like a little digest
Oh, that'd be nice.
every couple of weeks. So if you want to sign up for that, I think.
Yeah, I've gotten it a couple of times.
Okay.
I need help with that, Laney. I didn't get the password email. I went back and checked. I got the first one where you gave us the basic info. I never got the password one. So you said they came in 2 different emails.
I like also that you can ask questions, or they ask for comments, and you can respond back. I've asked a question and I haven't got a response back yet, but it'll be interesting to find out whether I get an answer back or not, or whether it's quoted later on down.
Is this?
Oh, yes. So we did have one item of business from staff, and that's that it looks like we're canceling the next regularly scheduled planning commission for February 25th.
Oh, okay.
We do not have any items.
Although it looks like upcoming, we have library and now the sports, potentially the sports warehouse off Second. Might be doing an addition.
There's also a possibility of an application coming in to rebuild McDonald's.
Rebuild it, huh?
Yeah, they've contacted us several times over several months, and the last contact was about 3 weeks ago, and they said an application was imminent, and nothing showed up.
That's surprising. It's actually a nice facility.
I think
Did
they're,
it rebuild it, did it burn down last night or something?
Yeah, it looks like it's really good.
That
I think
reminded
they're
me of the
redoing all the
question
McDonald's.
I have on the locks down there, that they were going to do that building. We went through all that, and I have seen nothing going on with that, and I was wondering,
So
how long is that good?
which one are you talking about?
The locks or the mobile home park down on, off of Elm?
Yeah. I've kind of wondered about that too. They needed to get the Corps of Engineers to approve a letter of map amendment because they couldn't move forward without that. And those kind of applications can take a long time
Okay.
to obtain approval. So I think that's why they haven't come in, is they're going through that process. the planning commission's approval was based upon the fact that they were demonstrated to be out of the floodplain. And they used information from their engineer that was more reliable than what is found on the official FEMA maps. And so in order to take that information and get the maps officially changed, and that's what they needed to do, that process goes through the Corps of Engineers, and it's very time-consuming.
Well, I was wondering, is there a time limit that then they would have to come back and make another application?
Yeah, technically, their site plan approval was good for a year, and so we should probably check on that to see whether then they can get an extension. But technically, they need to ask for an extension for it to be extended.
And do you know, can you do that administratively, or do they have to come?
Yeah, we can do that administratively, but it's a good point. It's something we should follow up on, see how long that's been. Make an inquiry with them.
Okay. There's no other business, so I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I make a request that we end the meeting.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? We are adjourned.